Hey everyone, I'm Sargos, and I'm gonna help you answer the question, what is Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy? The game, not the movie. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is an action-adventure game where you play Star-Lord, the leader of a very dysfunctional team of outcasts. The game is inspired by the comic lore, but it carved its own space. Despite it looking like the movie, it is its own thing. The game was developed by Eidos Montreal, the people behind Deus Ex, Thief and the Tomb Raider. It was announced just 4 months before release, back in 2021, as a strictly single-player game without any microtransactions and DLC. You get the whole package for the price. Clear evidence that games can still be made without any additional baggage. The only thing that impacted its release was the horrid state at which the similarly named Marvel's Avengers came out and the superhero fatigue. Sad case of being compared to a predecessor with whom you only share a name and nothing else. On Steam it sits on very positive reviews, and it's priced at €59.99, and on Epic for the same price. It was free to grab on Epic in January of this year, but if you missed it, it's often on discount. When you launch the game, things are pretty straightforward. Go to new game, choose the difficulty, you can customize it to your liking, and off you go. You're Peter Quill, Star-Lord of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and from the start you are aboard your ship Di Milano, the Intermezzo area, where you can interact with your teammates Drax, Rocket, Gamora and Groot. Being on the ship seems very much like being on Mass Effect's Normandy, and that's a good thing. It feels natural, it's not force, it is after all your teammates' home, and your home as well. Right off the bat you start comparing everything to the movie. I mean, you saw the movie, let's not kid ourselves. Even if you read the comics, you went and saw the movie. So since I never read the comics, my baseline was the movie. And at start it was jarring to see and hear Drax not being Drax, but then again, it's Drax. It takes a bit of getting used to it. I had some doubts that I'll like the characters, but boy oh boy, I wouldn't compare them now. It just isn't fair to the movie. The game stands tall and towers over the movies, all three combined. It's clear proof of how a video game is a piece of art that can tell a story better than a movie. And how couldn't it be the case when a game has 20 hours of time to flesh out the world, the characters, the story? It has time to breathe and to set the mood. The first mission you do is also the introduction, the setting of the stage, if you will. The team is already formed and they did missions in the past, you were also there. Just go at it, this isn't an origin story. Well, you get used to the controls, and there is constant banter, amusing and fun banter. It's not too much or over the top like the annoying bracelet or like a young blood shouting, "Hell yeah, dude!" You get introduced to dialogue choices, your visor, the combat, and if you play the awesome Star Wars Republic Commando, you'll know what I mean. I mean, it feels like that. For the rest of you who didn't, it's similar to Dragon Age Inquisition's combat, meaning you are the leader and you tell your teammates when and which ability to use on which opponent. It's pretty simple. You use a wheel menu while the time slows down, and they do it. Most of the combat you'll use your pistols, the rest of the squad will also engage the enemy, but the real damage comes from your abilities and your team's abilities, which you can unlock by leveling, by being in combat. The squad mechanic works out of combat also, where you'll need to use a specific teammate's talents to clear the path for the rest of the team. This isn't complicated at all, it's simplistic, but it builds the feeling of being a part of the team. It is used as a tool for immersion, and other developers should take note. This is an action-adventure game with the accent on the adventure. Yes, the action and the combat is still there. There is a lot of combat, but it isn't the game's selling point. It's the story, and they nailed it. I won't spoil it. There are differences in the baseline, like Drax in some point killed Thanos. Also, in this rendition, Thanos' snap never happened. Which is okay, since they want to distance themselves from the MCU to avoid too much comparison to an already existing thing. The world, the characters, the known locations are interesting in their own right. The story isn't at all simplistic and straightforward. It has its depth, and the game has multiple endings. You as the player will have an opportunity to see new parts of the universe, see things from a different perspective. Without spoiling things, I'll just say that the story is an addition to the Marvel universe in every sense. User interface is minimalistic and clean, letting the player focus on the story. When out of combat, you'll only see subtitles. It was made to help immerse the almost cinematic experience of the game. Graphics and the art style are of very high quality. Everything looks crisp and clean, and there are a lot of shiny effects fitting for a comic book-inspired sci-fi shooter. The game runs smooth and stable, and there was a noticeable lack of loading screens. The character design was top-notch. Drax for me stands out as he's shirtless and you can see his muscles are alien. He looks human, very much so, but the strange muscle groupings, especially on the back, seem wrong for a human. But he isn't one. Rocket looks like a raccoon, the fur coat looks very realistic. Groot seems like he got wider, and Gamora seems like she's dressed to kill. The best of them is the Milano. The ship had the most work put in it, and it shows. It looks lived in for a very long time, as it is your team's home. Right. My experience with the game was a positive one. I really loved the movie. First one, a lot. So I had some hesitation when starting the game. I've gotten used to Chris Pratt's Star-Lord, so much that I thought I would have a hard time to adjust. I ended up loving the game more than any of the movies. I loved all the characters more than those in the movie. Rocket and Groot seemed exactly the same, but the biggest change was with Drax, who wasn't a big dummy, a comedic relief character, but a serious intelligent warrior who has some obvious lack of social intelligence, meaning he sees things in a different way. In the movie, Drax was depicted as being really strong, but here you can see him move and lift things that show his alien strength. We get to spend more time with each character to see them deeper than on surface level. When you find a curio or a trinket tied to a character, you get a dialogue about his or her past. Those are some nice touches. I love that there are some consequences on the choices you make. They are not immediate, but are felt later on, not just an illusion of choice. Only gripe I have are the QuickTime events. There are so few in between that they could have just been removed, and the ones that are there are strange. One had such strange inputs required that I failed like 10 times. I've never encountered such a strange input puzzle. The overall story was good, better than any of the movies, easily, since the game has more time to tell it. I enjoyed the game so much that I could easily see myself watching a walkthrough without a combat of the game rather than any of the movies. And lastly, I have to mention the soundtrack that works for me. since that was the music I grew up with and still listen to. I enjoyed every song, even those of the band Startled, and it always puts a smile on my face when a similar song would play, since those are just not your typical game song. At the end, the question is, would have the game fared better if the Avengers game was a success? Or was the timing bad because of the whole superhero saturation or fatigue? Thank you for your time. I hope I've given you enough info on the game, and if I missed something, be sure to tell me about it in the comments. Also, smash the like button or the subscribe button, and if you're interested, I stream on Twitch a few times per week.